Klay Thompson, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, and Steph Curry. What do all of these guys have in common? They are elite shooters, all-time greats that have perfected the art of shot making. But what's interesting is that all these guys have different shooting forms, all with their own unique styles. Curry shoots from his side with a slight angle and a very quick one-motion sequence. Ray Allen brings it away from his body with a high set point and a two-motion shot. Klay's is pretty much perfect, and Reggie Miller's was completely unorthodox. And it's not just because they're from different eras. Even right now, there are many players who break the rules we were taught as kids, and yet it somehow works. But then I thought to myself, does a perfect shooting form even exist? Klay Thompson is usually the first name that's brought up, and rightfully so. He has a textbook jump shot that ticks all the boxes. But if his form is perfect, why doesn't every player shoot like him? Why is it that some of the best players in the world shoot the wrong way? Why is it that as a kid, you were always taught to shoot a specific way? Bend your legs, keep a straight guide hand, and put your hand in the cookie jar. But why do the best in the world not follow this? Let's first take a look at Curry. Now the man is undeniably, unanimously, by all means the greatest shooter ever. But I've never seen anyone with the same form as him. Absolutely no coach or trainer ever teaches a shooting form, even though he's the best. Why is that? Well, your shooting form doesn't actually matter, to an extent. There are guys that have terrible shooting forms, but are elite from the line. Then there's guys with terrible forms and are actually terrible. And then there's also guys who had bad form and then changed it and got better. Now what this tells us is that how you shoot isn't necessarily the number one priority to actually be a good shooter. What people don't understand is that scoring is more mental than physical. The best pure scorers are the ones who don't even think about their form, the ones in flow state. This is why most players shoot with whatever is most comfortable to them. Majority of players have their own hitch or pattern that makes their shot their shot. Jason Tatum uses his whole body and swings with momentum to shoot. Most people make fun of him for shooting like this, but it does work for him. Kyrie has a super strong thumb flick, and this exact thumb flick is what you're taught not to do, and yet we see Kyrie on our screens hitting threes like it's nothing. Anthony Edwards doesn't snap his wrist, another rule that almost every kid was taught. Most hoopers have something like this, a thing they do that makes their shot work for them. It's why shooting in basketball is one of the most complex mechanics in sports. There are so many things to be considered that it's almost impossible to narrow down a perfect form. Now scientifically, there are certain aspects that are proven to make more shots, but you don't actually have to follow any of them, except for one. I've analyzed many shooting forms, and all of them have one thing in common: flick, a universal fundamental that even the ugliest of jump shots follow. You just can't be a good shooter if you don't have a good flick. You can shoot from your shoulders, shoot on the way down, have no arc, even do whatever this is, and as long as you have a strong flick, you'll be alright. It's so important because the flick is what turns the ball into a shooting motion. It also creates backspin, which increases the chances of it going in even if it bounces on the rim. You can look at any NBA player's form, and they will always have a good flick, no matter what. But we also do have a general idea of what is considered to be perfect. Ideal release point, no movement of guide hand, flawless release all in one smooth motion. Klay Thompson checks all the boxes. A perfectly pure jump shot. This is the textbook form that everyone should aim for, but they don't. A lot of the time players stick with their broken mechanics, so if the best in the world don't care, then should anyone even care about form? It's hard to decide just how much it matters, since there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but in general, everyone does shoot in a similar way. Bring the ball up to your head and with one arm flick it in. But what if you don't follow that and still make your shots? Perhaps the most well-known example of this is Lonzo Ball. This somehow worked for a while, but once he got to the league, his shooting, which used to be a strength, became his biggest weakness. And so his trainers had to make a decision: stick with the jump shot he had developed all his life, or completely revamp his mechanics in the hopes that his percentage gets better. Now I know I just went on about how form doesn't matter, but once Lonzo changed his form, his 3-point percentage went up by a lot. People always say as long as it goes in, it doesn't matter. But Lonzo's shot was sort of going in, and the small adjustments are what made it go in a hell of a lot more. Honestly, many players could have huge benefits with changing their form. It's just most of the time they've spent their entire lives shooting that way and don't want to change it. Could you imagine Giannis shooting like Trae Young or LeBron shooting like Curry? Your form is based off your physical limitations as well. For those that don't know, this is Lethal Shooter, a professional shooting coach and one of the best pure shooters in the world. A guy that does this for fun. But this is what he had to say about shooting form.
You know, a lot of people have to understand your body type isn't going to be the same as Susan's body type. And once we figure out what's consistent for you and that melody for your body, we want to continue to keep that.
Even with Lonzo, all he did was go from shooting from the left to the right. Everything else is pretty much the same, because it would require hundreds and thousands of reps for him to completely overturn years of muscle memory. So what this means is that if your jump shot is broken, it's really hard to fix it. And the best time to fix it is when you're a kid. As you grow up, you become stronger, taller, arms get longer, and so you have to adjust anyways. Some people just choose to never change it, like Tyrese Halliburton. He said the reason why he shoots in such an awkward way is because he wasn't strong enough to shoot on a 10-foot basket as a kid. So your childhood habits and body are what dictates your shooting form. If you try to change your form as an adult, it would be extremely difficult to change everything, because you're fighting against years and years of muscle memory, and it would take such a long time to overcome that, which is why guys like Halliburton, Horford, and Jokic just stick with it. The goal is to ultimately put the ball in the hoop, and just because your form is perfect doesn't guarantee your shots will be perfect too. Everybody has different physiques and develop different styles as kids. If your shots go in, it's hard to argue against it. A jump shot in basketball has a lot of elements, so many that it's hard to figure out what is the absolute best. And it's even harder when you have all-time legends who break the textbook rules and still succeed. But there is no universal perfect form. Klay Thompson has a smooth jumper that's mesmerizing to watch, but it wouldn't work for every player. If you blurred your eyes, then it would look like everyone's motion is pretty much the same. But if you really analyze what each player does, you'd notice that they all do something, even just a tiny bit, that makes their jump shot unique. Getting a perfect form can only do so much, and it's not the most important aspect in order to actually make more shots. Repetition, rhythm, and confidence make much more of a difference than perfecting your form. Just because you shoot like Curry doesn't mean you're going to make it in like Curry. And even the guys who have seemingly flawless jumpers are not flawless shooters. Even though Klay has phenomenal mechanics, he still gets reminded of that time when he went 0 of 10 from the field. Now, I'm not saying you should throw it in however you like, but most of the time you don't have to worry about the fine details. You don't gotta worry about having a thumb flick, or having a low release point, or shooting over your head. It's why all the greatest shooters of all time have such different jump shots. Now, if your shots aren't going in, then you might have to consider tweaking a few things. But as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.